get Jocko to do the body. And he said, I don't have time. I'm working on this streamliner. Doug, you want to do this body for money? Yeah, I'll do it. Bring it over. And Dave Beck was the guy that later became friends. He said that was the greatest week of his life when he came over and stayed with Jocko while Doug did the body. And we would do things like that. Bill Martin's 400 Junior needed a body. And Gablich and I were in some bar in Long Beach with Jack, the parachute guy, Jack Carter. And Cruzy called Gablich, got him, found him, said, we're going out to work on the car that you're going to drive. You want to come with us and what have you. So the three of us got in an Oldsmobile that Doug had, and we drove out to Roy Steen's place. And that's why they were building the 400 Junior. And Gablich was going to drive it as well as the Sandoval car. We spent all night out there. Doug bent aluminum, and Gablich and I played chess, and just kind of hung around. Steen was there, and Jeep and Ronnie came in and out. I mean, it was that kind of deal. And I was making fast friends with these people, something that didn't happen in New Orleans. People in New Orleans, especially in the racing world, were all like this,
If you were from the outside.
Even if you were a participant racer, you might learn something that they know. And so they were all kind of standoffish, not only having to do with the race cars, but just personally. And I was kind of abrasive to begin with, because I said out loud what most people were thinking. So people were a little reluctant to open up to me for fear that I would do what I do. Anyway, now I'm in the fold. I mean, I purchased a Top Fuel car. I know a lot of the players by reputation mostly, and many of them firsthand, and they've accepted me, which astonished me, because I'd never been in a situation where people accepted you for what you were. New Orleans is a very strange place when it comes to interpersonal relationships, because there's cults of nationalities. There's the Irish Channel, and there's the Italian section and the Jewish section, and so it's kind of fragmented, more so now than it's ever been, because the black people have taken over 95% of the city, and so it's one thing, and the Garden District and the French Quarter is another, and everybody else moved out after the Civil Rights Act. So I was not used to being accepted just because I was accepted. And I really enjoyed that. And when we started racing, guys came around with parts, would offer parts. If we break the motor, somebody'd offer a motor. They'd come run it. We split a cylinder. Well, we wrecked a main cap, and they split the block up to the cam hole on Madden's 354. So he's laying there on the floor, and Palmquist walks in. Good old Boof Palmquist. And Ed was his first name. He ran with Weeks, who's a friend of Jenko's. They ran an 8 carbureted straight 8 thing, most carburetors I'd ever seen on an engine, on a big old log manifold like this, and on a front mount. And he says, "Oh, I got a motor." So he went home and got his motor, and we ran that weekend. And it didn't run very good. And Dale Smart had been hanging around with. He was another guy that ran Howard stuff, so he was in the Howard camp. And he says, "Well, if you let me drive it, I'll put my motor in it. Have at it," Where we went. But let me backtrack a little bit to when I bought the car.
The Sandoval car.
The Sandoval car. I gave him the money, and I said, "I'll take delivery on it anytime you're ready to give it up. So then Frank called me and said, Sorrell's sitting on his hands. He's not going to have the car finished. We'd like to run the Winter Nationals. Okay, run the Winter Nationals. So we went to the Winter Nationals, and we raced, I think Porter and Reese first round and got beat pretty bad.
This is with the car that you purchased?
Yeah.
And it had some kind of shorty body or something, just
It had
enough to run.
The,
This
the
shot
shot
body
you
here.
showed, the two pictures.
This car right here.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. But, and Sorrell's working on a different body?
He's building the Scoundrel,
Yeah.
Oh,
which is a different car.
which you have bought too.
Yeah, no, I didn't have any. Sandoval's bought that. I got a picture of
Oh,
it.
okay, I was confused.
So he bought the Sandoval Brothers car, but
When they finished.
But they wanted to use the car
One more race.
one more race.
Before the original Scoundrel was done.
Yeah, this is the Scoundrel the first day out.
Yeah.
That's Frank, that's Tony, that's me.
Yeah.
This is the younger Sandoval brother.
Yes.
Let me pull that out and we'll show that.
Please do. That's a favorite of mine.
This is like June of '64, after Bakersfield. That's
Yeah.
the car there. Very first run.
Yes.
So obviously Sorrell is finally finished, at least. the
Finished,
front
well, he got the tin done, and that's the body that he built for that car. He made 3 bodies at California Metal Shaping, and the other 2 were Jack Ware's cars. So that's the car they were waiting for. This is the car we were partners in.
part you purchased.
Hold that up a second. Let me look at that.
And the first race we went to when we were together was the UDRA meet,
Okay.
Held at,
Lions, the very first UDRA meet. We beat everybody on Saturday night except Prudhomme. We lost to Prudhomme in the final round. We ran 8 flat, 190. Greek had low ET at that meet at 788. So we were in the hunt. Howard was very happy. The next day we beat everybody and beat James Warren for the money. So we essentially took the whole, if we would have had a cumulative points, we'd have won everything.
And that's with that Scott injector on top.
Scott injector. And Radican, somebody put up a $500 bounty on the Snake in the yellow car.
Rear Black and Prudhomme.
Yeah. And for anybody to beat the Snake that round, and the first round was Safford, Gady, and Radican, the Sauer sisters. And Safford smoked him, but blew it up in the big time in the process. And Snake, not liking to lose, was really irritated that they would spend it to beat him. But they beat him fair and square. They left together.
And this was the Oldsmobile.
This was the
square
high back
back.
Olds, yeah,
Yes.
the blue
Yep.
high back
Yep.
Olds. And then we beat Stellings with Jeep, and we beat the Red Turkey first round because he was low qualifier. I mean high qualifier. Stokey, Stellings, and then we beat James Warren in the Ridgeback Switch, the Chevy, for the money. And I couldn't have been happier. And
Pretty tough bunch.
exactly. Truth be known, I didn't have anything to do with it. I was just part owner. But it was the ticket to ride, it turns out. Because people said, yeah, Prieto.
And who was driving at the time?
Gablich?
Yeah, Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gary was good, and he was crazy, and he would do things that I wouldn't have hired him as a driver because he did silly things. And so we put the car together and asked Gary, "What do you want to do?" And he said, "Well, I'll drive the new Sandoval car because I think it was a legs under car."
Was a legs in it.
And he said he liked that. It was more comfortable. This car your knees set really high because the seat was very low. The chassis was down on the rear end. So there was plenty of room below the rear end, but not much above it. And it had hurt him, that when the clutch came out of it at Bakersfield, it thumped his ankles pretty good. So he decided to go with the Sandoval's, and we hired Bobby Tapia, who at that point had the only ride he'd ever had was his own Scotty Finn car with the Chevy in it. He'd never driven. I think he drove Tarrant Woodruff's car a couple of times, but they didn't run very good. They had an Enderley barn door, and it would run fuel out the pipes, and just wasn't good. And so when he got in his car, he was happy to get the ride. And we raced, and we wore out lots of people's stuff. Schmeiser came along with a motor. Palmquist, I mentioned. Donovan gave us some parts. Howard he would buy us anything we wanted, but we never really took much from him. All the valve gear he gave us. Liz would buy us tires whenever we needed it.
It would be Howard's wife, right?
Yeah,
Liz.
Liz Johansson, sweetheart of a lady. Loved to go to the races. Just had a great old time going to the races. And we ran mid-pack most of the time. We had fast time at San Fernando one weekend. Adams beat us unmercifully at San Fernando with him and Rick Stewart. And we'd go out there, and we'd eventually have to race him, and he beat us. And Madden used to say, "Why can't we get one of them cars?" I said, "Well, that's a Woody car." Yeah, but this thing's a barge compared to that. And he was right. This car was pretty much worn out. I mean, it had been raced, and it still held all the parts together, and it ran okay. Never picked the front end up. That was the thing I liked about it. The height of the rear end in the back of the chassis and the angle of the engine all contributed to the fact that it didn't pick the front end up. We ran some weight. I think there's some weight on it there, about 15 pounds, but it was security because it didn't need it. But we didn't want to lose with carrying, picking the front end up. It was a 144-inch car, weighed 1290 with a 354 in it. We ran 331s, and we didn't.
31-inch Chrysler.
Yeah, we never ran the 392. Didn't get in that car until Cagle came along. So we wore out all of Madden's parts, and Howard said that he would sponsor him to a new race car specialties car. And he asked me if I wanted in. I said, "Not really, no. I can't afford to have two cars, and nobody wants this thing. So I'll just pass." And at that point, I was working at Douglas and at night and hanging around Woody's all day long. And Woody would give me jobs to do and pay me cash to do it. And what I did at his shop was mostly the final assembly. And when I wasn't putting the cars together, I cut the axles. I used a hole saw to cut the slices, the kingpin boss, and other odd jobs.
What were you doing over at Douglas Aircraft?
I was grinding wing spars for DC-10s on a big walking mill that turned this way. You put 250 pounds of aluminum in it and come out with 13 pounds and a pile of chips to fill the room, But yeah, that's what I was doing.